depended not on war or weapons, but on one man's vow to remain untouched. When an alien queen demands a sacred sacrifice, humanity's last hope lies in a quiet linguist with a hidden past. But what he finds aboard the alien ship isn't death, it's destiny. Stay with us because this story doesn't end where you think it will. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. The skies above the Pacific Ocean shimmered without warning. A ripple almost like a heat wave in the air opened across the clouds. From it, a massive ring of light emerged, hovering silently above the water. Within moments, a holographic projection began to form. It wasn't a spaceship or weapon, but a towering figure made of glowing threads of light, tall and alien, eyes like burning moons. The image flickered into full form, its presence so enormous and strange that it was immediately broadcast across every major news network on Earth. The world stopped. In the main chamber of the Global Council in Geneva, leaders and advisors stood, frozen. The figure began to speak, its voice layered like several people talking at once in harmony. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to echo inside the mind of everyone watching. We are the Valari. Our queen, Ayara, enters her time of sacred transformation. The ancient rite requires a tribute, one soul untouched by intimacy to serve as the vessel. You have one planetary rotation to provide the chosen one. Refuse, and your world will be no more. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the projection vanished. Silence followed. The people in the chamber looked at each other, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Then came the shouting. Military generals barked about immediate retaliation, while diplomats demanded more information. Scientists began calculating what one planetary rotation meant, 24 hours. That was all the time Earth had. In the middle of the chaos, a quiet man remained still. His name was Marin Solis. He wasn't a general or a politician. He was a linguist, a translator trained to understand alien languages and signals. He had joined the council 5 years ago after a personal loss, choosing to live a life of solitude and service. Now, standing among panicked leaders, he reached under his shirt and touched the small silver pendant he wore every day, a symbol of his vow to live without physical or romantic connection. He listened carefully to the arguments flying around him. Most were about weapons and strategies, but Marin wasn't thinking about war. He was thinking about the phrase the Valari used, untouched by intimacy. That wasn't a common way to describe someone. It was a poetic phrase, full of meaning. He had heard similar wording in ancient texts and mythologies. This wasn't about punishment or power. It was about ritual, and somehow that made it even more terrifying. Later that evening, after endless meetings and failed plans, Marin stood before the council. His heart beat fast, but his voice was calm. I believe I meet their requirement, he said. The room fell quiet again. I have lived a life of personal abstinence, not for religious reasons, but as a choice. I believe I am the closest match we have to what they described. The president of the council, a woman named Anya Merrill, stared at him. You understand what this could mean? You're not just volunteering to talk to them. You might be offering your life. Marin nodded. I know. There were protests, of course. Some believed he wasn't qualified. Others said it was suicide. But no one had a better idea. The military admitted Earth's weapons wouldn't even scratch the Valari ships that now surrounded the planet in silence. And so, just before sunrise, Marin was taken to the launch site. As he walked across the field toward the transport shuttle, the sky slowly turned orange. He looked up one last time at Earth's stars. Somewhere out there, he would find answers. Or never return. He had written no goodbyes. He had no family left, no one to grieve him. But 8 billion people were watching, hoping. Inside the shuttle, the pilot was already waiting. She looked at him through the rearview mirror and asked, You really sure about this? Marin gave a faint smile. No, but I'm more sure about why I can't let someone else go. As the engines roared and the shuttle lifted into the sky, The world watched in complete silence. There were no speeches, no national flags, just one quiet man flying toward the unknown, carrying the weight of humanity's survival on his shoulders. The Volari vessel was enormous, more like a city than a ship. It drifted in orbit above the Earth like a second moon. As the human shuttle approached, a soft blue light opened in the side of the alien craft. The shuttle was drawn in, guided gently by invisible forces. No weapons, no alarms, only silence. Marin peered through the small window. He saw glowing walls, shifting colors, and shapes that didn't make sense, like the inside of a dream. The pilot whispered, "Good luck," as the airlock opened. He stepped out alone. No one greeted him. No sounds, no words. Just light, movement, and a deep, strange energy in the air that made the hairs on his arms stand up. He could feel the importance of this place in his bones. He knew that whatever lay ahead would be unlike anything he had imagined. But he walked forward steady and quiet, one step at a time. Because sometimes one step is all it takes to change the course of a world. Marin Salas stood at the threshold of a world no human had ever entered. The doorway behind him sealed shut with a soft hum, and ahead stretched a hallway unlike anything he could have imagined. The walls glowed softly, pulsing with light that seemed to move in rhythm with something alive. They weren't made of metal or stone, but a material that felt like it was part of a living thing, smooth, warm, and gently shifting with his steps. He took slow, careful breaths, every sense heightened, but his mind stayed focused. He had come here by choice, to face whatever the Volari meant by their sacred right. Two tall figures waited at the end of the corridor. Their bodies were hidden beneath curved silver armor that moved silently with them. Their masks were smooth and blank with only two small slits for eyes. Without a word, they turned and began walking, clearly expecting Marin to follow. He did. They led him through endless corridors that twisted and turned, sometimes rising, sometimes descending, without clear direction. He noticed small details, symbols carved into the walls, glowing orbs floating in the air, strange sounds like soft whispers in the distance. It felt more like a temple than a ship. Eventually, they reached a large open space that took his breath away. It was a hall of enormous height, lit from above by a dome that showed a view of the stars. The walls were covered in living patterns of color and light, swirling and shifting as if telling a story only the Volari could read. Along the edges of the room stood dozens of Volari, each dressed in layers of flowing robes that shimmered with light. All of them turned as Marin was brought in. At the far end of the chamber stood a tall figure unlike the others, Queen Ayara. Her presence filled the room like gravity. She wore no armor, only elegant robes that revealed more of her glowing skin, covered in intricate moving patterns that shimmered with power. Her hair flowed like liquid night, and her eyes, strange, brilliant, and ancient, locked onto Marin the moment he entered. He felt it immediately. A pressure like her gaze could see not just his face but his thoughts, his past, and his fears. The guard stepped away from him. He was alone. He kept his posture straight, hands relaxed at his sides. He didn't bow. Instead, he spoke clearly, his voice steady. "I am Marin Salas. I come as your people requested. I come freely." The queen stepped down from the dais slowly, each movement measured and graceful. Her bare feet made no sound. As she walked toward him, her markings pulsed brighter. A low murmur ran through the room. The Volari noticed it too. She stopped just a few feet in front of him and studied him in silence. "You are not what I expected," she said. Her voice was layered, just like the ambassador's, but softer, warmer. "You carry a silence inside you, a stillness." Marin met her eyes, though it took effort. "I've lived a quiet life," he said, "by choice." "You are unclaimed," she said, more to herself than to him. "Unbound, pure yet not naive. The energy marks you." She reached out one finger, pausing just short of touching his chest. For a moment, the air between them shimmered, then her hand dropped. From the side of the room, another figure approached, tall and stern, dressed in dark red with a towering headdress. His name, Maren would learn later, was High Keeper Sorrel, the Queen's spiritual advisor and guardian of tradition. He did not hide his displeasure. "My queen," Sorrel said, his voice sharp. "The alignment nears. We must begin the preparation now. This human cannot remain untested." Queen Ayara did not take her eyes off Maren. "He is already being tested, Sorrel. Look." She raised her hand, and the patterns on her skin flared, echoing faintly on Maren's arms. Gasps filled the chamber. Maren glanced down. On his forearms, just beneath his rolled sleeves, faint glowing lines had begun to appear, not drawn but growing from within. "He is reacting to our bond," the Queen said quietly. "He has not touched me, I have not touched him, yet still the energy responds. This has not happened in generations." Sorrel frowned. "That is all the more reason to proceed with the ritual swiftly. Such signs are dangerous when unexplained." Maren took a slow breath. "If I may ask, what exactly does this ritual involve? Your message to Earth made it sound like a sacrifice." The Queen finally turned from him and walked a slow circle around the center of the chamber. "It is a joining," she said, "a sacred exchange of life energy. It is not death, but it is a transformation that leaves neither the same. That is why only one can be chosen." Maren's thoughts raced, but his voice remained calm. "And if it fails?" The Queen stopped walking. "Then the balance is broken, and the cost is not just your life or mine, but the spirit of my people for generations." The weight of her words settled heavy in the room. Maren nodded. "Then let it be tested. I came here to offer myself, not just for Earth's sake, but because something inside me said this was my path." A silence followed. Then Ayara spoke again, this time to the room. "Prepare him for the rite of purification." Guards stepped forward once more. As they approached, the Queen gave Maren one final look. It was not fear or power that filled her gaze now, but something else. Curiosity, and perhaps a question she hadn't yet formed. Maren returned her gaze, steady and clear, even as he was led away into the deeper chambers of the Valari vessel. Whatever was coming, he knew it had already begun. Maren Solis stood in the center of a round chamber filled with warm light. The walls shimmered with patterns that moved slowly like water under moonlight. He was alone, dressed in a simple robe made of a material that felt like silk and mist combined. His body still tingled from the purification process. The strange liquid he had been submerged in had left glowing lines across his chest and arms, thin and soft at first, but now slowly growing brighter and more detailed. He stared down at the markings, wondering what they meant. They looked like the ones on Queen Ayara's skin, but not the same. They seemed to change, to move in time with his breath as if they were alive. His mind felt different too. Thoughts came more quickly. Feelings from the past rose and faded with unusual clarity. Something was changing inside him, and he didn't know if it would stop. The silence was broken by a soft sound like wind through tall grass. An old woman stepped into the room. Her body was thin and wrapped in layers of silver cloth that floated around her like mist. Her eyes were pale and clouded, but they didn't seem blind. She walked with no hesitation, no doubt. Maren recognized the quiet respect the guards outside had shown when they bowed to her. This was someone important. "You are the human," she said in a voice soft but firm. "The one the markings have chosen." Maren nodded. "That's what they say." The woman walked slowly around him, her eyes studying the glowing symbols on his skin. "My name is Neri. I was once the voice of the stars before Ayara was born. I've seen many rituals. I've guided 3 queens through their ascension, but this is different." Maren didn't move. "Different how?" Neri stopped and looked up at him. "Because the markings responded before the joining. They responded on sight. That has not happened in thousands of years. Not since the old texts were hidden. Not since our leaders feared what they could not control. He frowned. What do these texts say? Neri looked toward the wall. With a wave of her hand, the pattern shifted to reveal an image. It showed a figure not of the Velari, a traveler standing before a queen. Their bodies were surrounded by light, their markings glowing the same. The prophecy, she said, speaks of a time when a soul from another world would come. A soul with no ties to our past. This one would awaken the true connection between our kind and the force that binds the stars. Together, the traveler and the queen would change everything. Marin stared at the image. And you think that's me? Neri smiled, a tired, knowing smile. The markings think so. Ayara may not admit it, but she feels it too. You've stirred something inside her that she never expected. He turned away, trying to understand. He had come to offer himself for peace. He had not come for destiny, for prophecy, or for power. But everything he had experienced since stepping onto the Velari ship seemed to be pushing him toward something bigger than he had imagined. What happens if the High Council doesn't believe in the prophecy? He asked quietly. Neri's eyes darkened. Sorrel, the High Keeper, already fears you. He fears change. He guards the old ways with sharp teeth. If he cannot control this ritual, he will try to stop it. He would rather end you than risk the balance. He has spent his life protecting. Marin felt a chill in his chest. So what do I do? Prepare. Neri said simply. You are already changing. The energy has accepted you. But the final ritual is more than symbols and words. It is a bond of will, of purpose. You must be sure of who you are, and of what you're willing to give. Marin sat down on the smooth floor. And what if I fail? Then the bond breaks, she said, and the light that connects us to the stars could be lost for another 1,000 years, or longer. As she turned to leave, she paused. Be careful, Marin Solis. You are not just in their world now. You are part of it, and not all parts welcome you. Hours passed. He was left alone again. But rest did not come. Thoughts moved through his mind like rushing rivers. He remembered the quiet years of his life, days spent alone with books, with silence, with his pain. He remembered the choice he made to walk a different path, not because he was special, but because he couldn't bear the kind of loss he had once felt, and now that choice had brought him here. The door opened once more, and this time it was Queen Ayara. She wore no crown, no grand robes, only a simple dark garment that showed the glowing symbols across her arms and neck. Her face was serious, but not cold. You've been speaking with Neri, she said. Marin nodded. She told me about the old prophecy. Ayara stepped closer. And do you believe it? I don't know, he said. But something is happening. You feel it too. She didn't deny it. Instead, she knelt before him and placed her hand gently on his chest. The markings on both of them glowed brighter, and for a moment the room grew warmer, as if wrapped in light. I was not ready to believe, she said softly. But you are here, and the stars don't lie. They stayed like that for a moment, connected by something deeper than words. Outside, the ship hummed. With energy, and far away in the stars, something shifted. The ritual was coming, and with it, the future. The great ceremonial chamber was unlike anything Marin Solis had ever seen. Its domed ceiling shimmered with the lights of 1,000 stars, not as a painting or projection, but as if the cosmos itself had been drawn down into the room. The walls breathed with slow waves of color, and the air hummed with soft vibrations that made his skin prickle. Dozens of Velari nobles filled the raised balconies that circled the chamber, dressed in flowing robes of deep blues and silvers. They watched in silence, their eyes focused on the pathway of light that stretched across the floor between two grand arches. Marin stood at one end of that path, dressed in ceremonial robes that shimmered faintly with the same glowing markings that now danced along his skin. They pulsed gently, echoing the rhythms of the energy that filled the room. The robe felt light, almost a part of him. His heart beat slowly, but firmly. Despite the uncertainty, He felt calm. More than calm. Ready. At the far end of the path, Queen Ayara appeared, stepping forward in silence. Her presence was both fierce and graceful, her body marked with intricate patterns of living light that moved with her breath. She walked without hesitation, her eyes locked on Marin's. Each step she took made the path beneath her glow brighter, and with every movement the chamber seemed to lean closer, holding its breath. High Keeper Sorrel stood in the center, draped in the crimson robes of his office. His face was hidden behind his ceremonial mask, but his posture spoke of unease. He raised his staff and began to speak, his voice echoing through the chamber. We gather to witness the joining of energy, the rite of ascension, passed down, for thousands of cycles now calls for the vessel and the sovereign to become one. As Sorrel spoke, Marin and Ayara continued walking until they met at the center of the path. Neither of them said a word. Their eyes held each other, and the glow of their markings began to pulse in perfect rhythm. Sorrel lifted the staff higher, but before he could continue, a deep vibration shook the chamber. The lights above flickered. A few nobles gasped. Ayara turned sharply to face Sorrel. Marin felt it too. A change in the energy. Something unstable. A warning. Suddenly, from the upper level, a blast of sharp blue light shot toward the pair. Marin barely had time to react, but Ayara was faster. With a movement of her hand, a shield of golden energy flared to life, catching the attack and scattering it into harmless sparks. Shouts rang out as several masked figures emerged from the crowd, armed with weapons that shimmered with dark power. Traitors, Sorrel roared, his mask falling away as he turned. You would strike the sacred rite? One of the attackers screamed, This is not the true way. The prophecy is a lie. We will not be ruled by outsiders. Ayara's face was still calm, but her voice was sharp as stone. Enough. With a sweep of her arm, the room pulsed and the light from the chamber itself responded. Beams of energy shot down from the walls, disabling the attackers with careful precision. Within moments, they were restrained by silent guards who had waited in the shadows. The room slowly quieted again. Marin stood unmoved, watching everything unfold. When Ayara turned back to him, her expression had changed. Not fear, not doubt, something deeper. Trust. I did not expect this, she said softly, just for him. But the bond we share is stronger than fear. Marin looked at her not as a queen, but as someone who had carried great weight alone for too long. Then let's finish this. Together. Sorrel hesitated, then slowly bowed his head. Let the rite continue. Ayara reached out her hand and Marin took it. As their fingers touched, the chamber lit up. Their markings blazed with radiant light, weaving together like threads of the same pattern. A wave of warmth rushed through them, and the space around them seemed to vanish. For a moment, they were floating in light, surrounded by stars and silence. Marin felt her presence inside his thoughts, not invading but connecting. He saw glimpses of her memories, her loneliness, her strength, her doubts, and she saw his grief, his quiet resolve, and the reason he had chosen this path. When they returned to the chamber, everything had changed. The markings on their skin had merged into a new design, one never seen before. A symbol of unity, not dominance. A blend of worlds. The Valari nobles rose to their feet. For the first time in living memory, they bowed. Later, as Marin stood beside Ayara in the quiet of her private chamber, he looked out at the stars beyond the wide windows. Earth was a pale blue light in the distance. He knew he could never return to it, not fully. He was part of something else now, a bridge between two civilizations. Ayara stood beside him, her voice low. You are no longer a guest here. Marin turned to her. And you are no longer alone. The rite had not been a sacrifice, but a beginning. Not the end of a life, but the start of something greater. As the stars drifted beyond the glass, Marin felt a peace he had never known. He had chosen to walk into the unknown. And in doing so, he had found something worth holding on to. a purpose that stretched far beyond one life or one world.